actually has friends.
Nice.
This is Scotty G and Friends on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Hey, now that we're one big happy family, we can talk about the fact that Jon Wilner, you can catch his stuff on KSL.com. One of our favorites when it comes to breaking down college athletics, the business side, what's going on in the Pac-12, the Big 12, even the Mountain West. Nobody's got it better, and nobody covers it better than Jon Wilner. Jon, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we appreciate it as always. This is going to be kind of a shotgun approach interview because there's so many different topics I want to hit with you. But first off, I want to get your thoughts as, I do Utah State games, so I'm keenly interested in the financial resources going to Utah State. How improved is the Pac-12 TV deal over what the Mountain West got in their deal?
Oh, I mean, it's pretty, probably double at least. But the thing is that it's complicated on both sides. The Pac-12, the new Pac-12 is getting X amount, but that's a gross total from CBS, the CW, and USA. You have to include the production costs for the Pac-12 enterprises that is going to do a lot of the games. Meanwhile, on the Mountain West side, their media deal is for Y amount, but they are using conference funds to kind of prop up the number for the continuing members. They are using an unequal distribution situation. So it is hard. And then you've got the performance-based payouts that are going to come, for making the NCAA tournament or making the college football playoff. It's really hard to put a single number on it for one school versus another school. But I mean, Utah State is clearly coming out ahead. Not way ahead compared to the Mountain West, but also I think ahead of where they would have been had they stayed in the Mountain West and the Mountain West remained intact.
So Cameron Walker, new athletic director at Utah State, mentioned in these meetings that he's working through in the new Pac-12, he's like, it feels like we're building a startup. It feels like we're building a conference from scratch here. And essentially they are.
They are.
How difficult of a process is this for this conference to try to get this thing off the ground?
I think it's been very difficult, but also not entirely in a bad way because they have basically a blank space to work from, right? So that's why they were able to do something like create the flex week for the football schedule. We'll see what they do on the basketball side. But they do have a certain amount of leeway to kind of build the plane as they're flying it in a good way. So I think it's been difficult, but they are prioritizing college football playoff and NCAA tournament, the postseason access, postseason bids, postseason revenue. That is kind of guiding their strategy for both football and men's basketball. I think that they are being careful to not expand just to expand, to add another member, even though it might be more convenient if they had 9 football schools and 10 basketball schools. It'd be more convenient for scheduling. But they want to keep the bar fairly high. They don't want to add schools that will potentially undermine strength of schedule and revenue, postseason access, that kind of thing.
When I'm on the road, I keep hearing St. Mary's name come up, and then there's some people that say, "Oh yeah, we think it's happening," and others say, "No, there's not a chance." Where are you at on that?
Well, I think if they wanted to add St. Mary's, if they thought St. Mary's was a no-brainer, St. Mary's would already been in. They would have been in a year ago, pretty much. If that was an easy call. St. Mary's has got a good basketball brand. The rivalry with Gonzaga is tremendous and needs to continue, even though they are not in the same conference starting next year. But St. Mary's is a very small school, very small arena. Financially, the school's in a tough situation because of a declining enrollment. There's questions about how competitive St. Mary's will be after Randy Bennett retires. It's not necessarily as much of a no-brainer as you might think just by looking at the wins and losses. So we'll see how it plays out. My guess is that they don't add St. Mary's. I don't know. I don't have insider knowledge on that one in particular, but I think they would have done it.
There's obviously the lawsuit brewing, and we talk about the only winners in a lot of this are the guys with the billable hours.
Yes.
Is there any resolution on the horizon, or is this going to continue to get uglier and uglier?
I would say with the trial, they're going through discovery right now. You got the trial, I want to say is like July 7th, 2027 is the trial date. My default position, Scott, is that no university president ever wants to go through discovery fully. And so they are going to get to a point here. You know, they tried mediation last summer. Neither conference, I think, felt like their hands were tied to the point that they had to settle. It's like, well, let's see what cards you got. And now they're seeing each other's cards. And so I think the chances of a settlement are pretty good here in the next 6 to 9 months. But now I'm talking specifically about, there's two lawsuits, and I think a lot of fans forget about that, right? There's the poaching penalty lawsuit that the Pac-12 has filed against the Mountain West for $55 million in poaching fees. Then there's the exit fee lawsuit, which Utah State, Boise State, Colorado State have filed against the Mountain West over what is basically $100 million in exit fees. I never went to law school. I'm just kind of going with a little bit of common sense and some stuff that I've talked to with attorneys. I think the Pac-12 has got a better case in the poaching penalty lawsuit, and I think the Mountain West might have a better case in the exit fee lawsuit. So if you figure that they're going to want to solve both, it doesn't do the conferences or the schools any good to solve one and not the other. If they're going to solve both and you kind of split it down the middle, you know, maybe the Mountain West ends up with $75 million. But that's just kind of my hunch. I don't really know.
Do you think, and I know neither one of us are lawyers, and the LSAT scared me, so I didn't want to take it. So when you look at what could happen with teams that decided to stay in the Mountain West, I keep hearing like, hey, UNLV might change their minds. But did they sign a grant of rights that would keep them from essentially changing their mind and joining the Pac-12?
My understanding is that, yeah, there's a grant of rights signed, but the conference also has obligations it needs to meet with the schools, UNLV and Air Force in particular. Look, it is realignment. Anything can happen. Never say never. I certainly think, you know, Pac-12 folks have said, oh, we're still considering, you know, another membership addition or two. I don't think anybody thinks that it is 100% certain at this point that UNLV is going to be in the Mountain West for the next 5 years. I certainly don't. And same goes for Air Force. Do I think that is more likely than not? Yes. But there is nothing set in stone. It is realignment, and anything can happen. Everybody should have learned that over the last 5 years. I mean, it's been, this whole thing started, right? Sacramento State going into the MAC started in July of 2021 when Texas and Oklahoma announced they were leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. That was the first domino. We're still getting the dominoes. It's possible Sacramento State was the last one for a while. It's also possible there will be more.
Jon Wilner, the Wilner Hotline, joining us, and you can read it all over the country, including at KSL.com, and one of the best breaking down college athletics. All right, you talk about the dominoes, and I know this is a little out of left field, but I do have some affinity for these programs. Do you ever anticipate Montana or Montana State or the combination of the two making the jump up?
I would not be surprised. They're going to be closely monitoring North Dakota State.
Yeah.
Right. Now, there are some serious hurdles. You got to have a place to go. Would the Mountain West potentially be interested? Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? The MAC could be interested down the road. The MAC used to be the most stable conference in the country, and now it's completely unstable. So the other issue is the money. You know, North Dakota State had to pay a lot. Sacramento State's paying like $28 million.
Unreal. Yeah.
All told, you know, so they can't, the Montana schools can't do it unless they have support at the highest level because of the funding question. But if it works for North Dakota State, I would not be surprised at all if the Montana schools try to do it eventually.
So there seems to be this interesting division going on in your Power Four conferences in terms of schools that are all about revenue sharing and collectively bargaining a TV contract, and then others saying, like the SEC, like, no, you guys are on your own. We've got a sweetheart deal. We don't want to give that up. How do you think that resolves? Because there's a lot of haves and have-nots within the Power Four.
There are, and there's a lot of people. There's a lot of presidents and trustees meeting and commissioners doing white papers and people, the White House convening a session on Friday. There is a lot going on. Everybody, I think, is feeling the pressure. They're feeling the financial pressure. They also see that all these TV contracts are expiring in the early 2030s, and there's going to be something new. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to, be part of that. It's tough in a lot of ways. It's tough to call it the Power Four because it is really the Power Two, the SEC and the Big Ten, and the ACC and Big 12 really are kind of just, they're tethered to the SEC and Big 12, and they don't want to lose that connection. But it's tougher. It's getting tougher and tougher by the month because of the difference in the financial resources. Difference on the field. I don't know how it's going to end, and I don't believe that anybody who tells you they think they know is lying. It could be it could be door number 3 that we haven't even thought of, Scott. That's the thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a super league. It doesn't necessarily have to be the SEC and Big Ten expanding again. They don't necessarily have to pool their rights and sell it collectively to the networks like the NFL does. But we don't know. There could be something we haven't even thought of that is what drives the next iteration of college sports. I have said I view this whole thing as, and it started with, COVID was kind of the propellant, but certainly the transfer portal and NIL have been key pieces of it. It's like college sports after 100 years as a child with this amateurism stuff is now in the awkward teenage phase and trying to figure out what it's going to be and find its own identity and, kind of get control of its gangly limbs. And eventually it's going to mature into some kind of adult. Now, is that adult going to be based on collective bargaining with the athletes? I think that's essential. Is that adult going to have a super league and then of 32 teams and then everybody else? I don't know, but there's going to be a more mature phase at some point in the next 6, 8, 10 years. But right now it is just, it's chaos and it's smells bad and it's got acne and all that kind of thing. And it's going to take a while to get through, but it's also fascinating.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Jon Wilner joining us from the Wilner Hotline. You can read it at KSL.com. You mentioned something via X that I thought was really fascinating because the NFL reigns supreme on everything. And the one thing that you can count on is the NFL will deliver TV ratings time and time and time again. How is the trickle-down effect affecting college athletics and their TV deals based on the fact that their network's saving up to make sure that they have the financial wherewithal to be able to stay in control of some level of NFL inventory?
Yeah, this is a fascinating development. I think the most important story in college sports in 2026 is actually the NFL's TV negotiations, because they have said their deal runs into the early 2030s, but they have said we want to renegotiate our rights. And that is an existential crisis for the networks. If Fox or CBS, if they lose the NFL, they are toast as networks, because so much of their advertising is based on the NFL, which is the ultimate appointment TV, right? I mean, the 100 most watched TV shows last year, the NFL was like 85 of them. So they have got to do what it takes to keep the NFL rights, and the NFL is going to demand a lot more money from its networks. So to me, the question is, all right, what effect does the fact that CBS, NBC, Fox, ESPN all are going to devote as much money as is needed to keep in the NFL. What does that mean for college sports? I think it means that a lot of the conferences are thinking, boy, we have got to try to do what we can to collect the scraps that are left over. And the networks are not going to have as much money for college football after they pay for the NFL, and they're going to only want premium content. So what does that mean for college sports? I mean, I don't think just two schools, right? I mean, Baylor, Wake Forest, or Louisville, Minnesota, those games aren't going to be, worth as much to these networks after they've had to pay for the NFL. The premium games are going to be what matters. And I think that's going to affect a lot of the strategic decisions that happen at the college football level.
So here in Salt Lake City, University of Utah announced the private equity revenue generating model, and then it's just kind of gotten quiet. And a lot of coaches up there are like, yeah, we haven't quite seen the plan. We haven't quite seen how this thing is laying out, and we haven't seen the money yet. So what were the ramifications of that? And do you feel like private equity, we're just on the cusp of that on a larger level in college athletics?
I do think that what Utah has done is going to spark other schools to do it. I happen to think Utah, they've got a lot of smart business people, including the president, right? Taylor Randall's got a business background. So, you get some university presidents in there, have doctorates in literature.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help you with college sports. So I think Utah is going to be smart about it. And I think it's going to work, but it's hard to know until we see the details, right? They made that announcement. It was early December, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of blanks that had to be filled in. And I think that's what's happening now. And if I were going to bet, I would say the chances are it's a good deal for Utah. But I'm not positive it's a good deal for Utah. And the devil is going to be in the details. And if it is a good deal, you'll see a lot of other schools doing it. And if it's not a good deal, people are going to kind of run and hide. How are they going to make enough money with their new revenue generating unit, the commercial arm of Utah Athletics? How are they going to make enough money to pay back the private equity firm is a big question. And until we see a plan, I think it's a valid question.
I mean, we just hear a lot of horror stories in business about private equity coming in and skinning everything to the ground studs and saying, okay, find a way to make it work. And I do think that there's a lot of nervous people out there thinking that they might do that to an athletic department.
They might. We'll see. You kind of have to have a little bit of faith at this point that Utah knows what they're doing. And again, even their board of trustees, they've got a lot of smart business people. Mm-hmm. I would add to real quick for a little bit of context, right? The Big 12 is also thinking about private capital to make private capital available to the schools. I think it's $30 million. But it is an opt-in deal, and it is effectively a credit card. You don't have to give away a piece of your athletic department. You can basically just take a $30 million loan. I don't know what the terms would be, but that is the Big 12 is making that available for its schools as well. So you almost have two different models, the Utah model and the Big 12 model. And we'll see how they both play out. I'm trying to reserve judgment on both until we see the details. And there's a lot of people in college sports that are watching each model.
Jon Wilner joining us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone from the Wilner Hotline that you can read over at KSL.com. Is there a big demand for the jersey patches? I've got to imagine there's probably got some strong interest there.
There is. That's a 7-figure deal for the schools that need the money for revenue sharing, right? Mm-hmm. So, just you can pick a jersey. It's going to be more Notre Dame, obviously. If Notre Dame is willing to sell a patch on that jersey, that's going to be worth a ton, maybe more than a lot of schools. But I think you're going to see it in a lot of places where it's already kind of being rolled out at some schools. I think we'll see it from in Utah, in the state of Utah, from the colleges there if they've got good opportunities. You have to protect the brand for sure, but you also have got to protect your budget. So I would imagine we'll see that. And how much branding will we see on the playing fields is another question. It's not just jerseys. It's also schools selling space on their fields, 20-yard line logos, that kind of thing. Some schools may do midfield. We'll see how that develops. But everybody is looking in every nook and cranny for every dollar and cent they can find.
All right, let's talk about, before we let you go, some actual real sports. I was in Las Vegas last night. Utah State got roughed up by UNLV. San Diego State also loses. You got New Mexico, who's kind of been up and down. Is this one or two big lead for the Mountain West this year in the tournament?
I think it's possible. I don't forgive me for not having the schedule. Who's Utah State's final game?
They got New Mexico. That'll be probably for the outright conference title coming up on Saturday.
I'm betting, and obviously nothing happens in a vacuum with the selection process, right? You got bid stealers in other leagues. I would bet that if Utah State beats New Mexico and then gets to the finals of the Mountain West, they're going to get in. Now, they might get in the first four. I think that's a distinct possibility to have a date in Dayton on Tuesday or Wednesday. And then if that's the scenario, that's probably the best case scenario for the Mountain West. Utah State beats New Mexico, reaches the championship game, loses, and then whoever they lose to gets the automatic bid. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is really the only way they get two in. I think anything else, and it's going to be pretty tough. It's not been a great year. San Diego State's kind of been up and down. New Mexico's done pretty well, but I don't think they've got the non-conference schedule that they need. And Utah State's had some bad losses. Boise State too. I mean, the Hawaii Pacific loss was a killer from day one for Boise. So the Mountain West has had better years. We'll see. The WCC could end up boxing out a second Mountain West team. Santa Clara could get in. Yeah. And the WCC's got 3, and the Mountain West only ends up with 1.
John, we appreciate it as always. Great insight, great analysis. You can read him at KSL.com, syndicated all over the country. You're the best, man. We appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
There he is, Jon Wilner. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, the Wilner Hotline.